Bees.
All
I
right.
have a gigantic dog that I just stopped him from barking, but I think he's going to start again.
Okay, definitely understand that. All right, good afternoon, everyone. There may be people coming on and off throughout the session, but we do like to start it on time. Today we have another great series of speakers. Is Tom joining us?
Yes, I think so.
Okay, but we can begin because Christine is here with us already, and thank you for being here, Chris. She's going to speak on cash management flow, which I think everybody is kind of thinking about these days. So, Chris, are you ready? You want to begin?
Sure, that sounds great. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Basically, everyone has to deal with cash flow in their businesses. And I think everyone's heard the phrase before of cash is king. And cash is the lifeblood of any business, and proper cash flow management is crucial. So there's a basic formula to cash flow. It's in essence your sales, which is your sales, cash sales and accounts receivable, minus your expenses or your accounts payable. So that basically is your cash flow. So we all need to know how to manage your cash flow. And the key is to collect your cash and your receivables as fast as possible and to slow down the payments of your expenses or your payables. And there's a couple different few things that I do recommend to my clients. And first and foremost is it's a lot easier to borrow money if you need it when you're not desperate for the cash. And unfortunately, a lot of the small businesses don't follow that rule, and they get into a situation where they back themselves into a corner thinking they could do it all. And what happens is they don't reach out to their professionals like their accountants, their attorney, their banker to assist them in, before they actually need the cash or need counseling. So you really need to develop a good relationship with your banker and your creditors, establish a line of credit before you need it. And the reason is because if you fail to plan, it only makes sense that a lender is not going to be very interested in helping you out if you're in a desperate situation. So it's always great to be proactive and have your lines of credit established really before you get into a position. Here's a few tips and tricks, things that you should really keep in mind. So all the components of cash flow, one side is the sales and the accounts receivable, the cash sales. So a couple things that I see as far as like problems versus solutions. So if you fail on a timely basis, that's the problem. Solution is check your pricing, know your overhead, your gross profit ratios, ask for partial payments of deposits up front, know the timing of when you have to pay for your products versus when your customer will be paying for you. Another problem would be is failure to bill on a timely basis. So you really should organize your billing schedule, bill promptly, set a specific date for billing, make it a routine part of completing the whole job. Utilize a web-based billing system or send bills via email to speed up that collection process. Another problem is actually the failure to collect accounts receivable. So if you have a system set up, an internal control system where you have someone specifically assigned to follow up on bills and collections, that's very helpful. Another thing you can consider is accepting credit cards or other payments as far as that would speed up the collection process. However, you have to be really aware of the amount of charges that are going to go along with that as far as the expense to set up those type of conveniences. Because if you have a 2 or 3% credit card service charge, remember that's going to come out of your bottom line. So you have to plan for that when you're originally pricing your job or pricing your products to cover all of the costs of cash collection. Another idea would be to accept checks by phone, fax, web, PayPal. There's so many different means of collection today that, it does help if you are up on all of these things. Another problem is when accounts receivable is not collected quickly. You could offer discounts to customers to get them to pay early. you consider accounts receivable financing or factoring, but those usually come with very high costs. And another thing that you could do is something very simple, like using a different color for your invoices. This allows your customers to easily pick out your invoice out of a stack of bills. They sound rudimentary, but that's just something simple. So you have to really think outside the box. Another problem that we see is a lack of customer analysis. Balance your customer base between the types of customers, locations, demographics. Be aware of putting all of your eggs in one basket, such as one customer being greater than 10% of all of your sales in your business. We actually had one customer that one client that had one customer. When the customer left, they were virtually out of business because they hadn't expanded their base to other customers. Determine key customers might be another solution. So you might be losing money on your best customer. That sounds counterintuitive, but someone that you think is your best customer, you might not be getting the margins that you are getting on other customers because of your familiarity or the fact that you're afraid to increase your prices to someone who's been with you for a long time, even though all of your other customers, your profit margins are much higher. Another thing is check the creditworthiness of your new customers. Don't be fooled by their name only. And it's great to do background checks on new customers because you'd really be surprised at how many people who names might be, very common, but they have a very difficult time with their cash bills and that type of thing. Another problem that we see is like lack of sales. So great thing is to have a referral system, word of mouth, creating a contact list, and possibly creating an incentive or rewards program amongst your current customers to refer new people to you. So let's flip the other side of the coin. So now the other side of the coin of the cash flow equation is your expenses and your accounts payable. So some of the problems that we've seen are payments are due at the same time. So you might have a group of payments that are all due on the 15th of the month. So what you can do is you can renegotiate the payment and your policies with your vendors to stagger when you're going to pay your bills. So say, for instance, you have your credit card paid on the 10th, your mortgage is paid on the 15th, you have your payroll, which is like you alternate your payroll weeks if you have every other week for payroll. So if you look at your bills, you can stagger them through the month to spread out your cash flow. Another trick is to stretch your payables, pay them when they're due. So instead of a 30-day payout, make it a 45-day payout. Obviously, you have to be very selective with that because you don't want to incur additional charges and expenses because then, again, that affects your cash flow. Another idea that we suggest to customers, clients, is that a small payment to a vendor is worth more than no payment and a promise. So if you have a certain amount of cash and you have 10 people to pay, it's better to divide up that certain amount of cash amongst 10 people so everyone is satisfied versus just paying that whole lump of cash to one person. Because it really goes a long way if people see that you're actually keeping them in the loop and you're paying them a little bit at a time. And that really goes a long way to develop a good relationship with your vendors. And they're much more willing to work with you if they know that you are actually trying to get them a payment and you're paying attention to them. Another thing is loan terms. So if you have a loan for a certain amount, like say 5 years, 60-month payments, you might go back to the lender and say, hey, you know what? Can I have that over 6 years, 72 months? Spread the payment out, reduce your monthly cost, so that way you actually conserve your cash flow a little bit better. Another problem that we see is that too much inventory. It's really easy to stock up on inventory when you think you have a good buy, but if you can't turn your inventory, of your cash flow is sitting in product. So unfortunately, your product doesn't pay the bills. So you really have to manage your cash flow or your inventory. Tighten up your inventory. If you could do just-in-time inventory ordering, and that is much better than stockpiling your inventory and tying up your cash. So another thing is to clean out obsolete inventory. If you're not selling it, get rid of it, because that's just cash in your pocket that you're just letting sit on the shelves. Again, avoid buying more than what you need. Sometimes suppliers come in and give you these great big discounts because they want you to buy ahead. Well, that ties up your cash. So how quickly are you actually going to return those products? And if you can't get back the cash flow loss by increasing your profit margins by the lesser prices that you're paying for the larger quantities that you're ordering, that was kind of a long, drawn-out equation. But anyways, you have to really know your numbers to know if buying at a bigger quantity for a lesser price is really going to meet your gross profit margins in order for you to really get back that benefit of buying more than what you actually need. Another thing is if you're checking your vendor pricing, don't be afraid to price shop, especially in times like this. It's amazing how you're consistently with someone for 2 or 3 years. Never hurts to price shop. Another idea is to take advantage of the early payment incentives, such as paying a 2% discount if you pay within 30 days. That 2% discount does add up over time, but again, that reflects on your cash flow. So I think you have to know your numbers and decide what discounts you're going to be taking advantage of and what is not going to affect your cash flow. Another idea is if you are in a group of similar businesses throughout an area, you might want to form a buying co-op. So if you can get together with a bunch of restaurants, make deliveries on the same day to minimize the cost of delivery, and that way one vendor goes to multiple restaurants in the area, and you guys can share in the cost savings. Let's see, another thing is the lack of available cash. So sometimes it is better to lease versus buy, such as copy machines, office equipment, that type of thing. It spreads out your cash flow, and it doesn't consume all of your cash up front. But you still get the tax benefit of being able to write off the equipment if you're using the equipment. And a couple things to be just wary of is bartering. That's one thing that people talk to me all the time. Well, I'll trade you if you give me this. Well, try to avoid that. Generally, it does not yield accurate reporting when you're reporting your sales or your expenses. So you know what ends up happening is that you distort your numbers and you don't have an accurate reflection of how your business is really doing. And the other thing too is, you know, if you're not trading above board, you don't really know if you're getting the value for your dollar. So that's something I really caution against. The other thing that I highly caution is using fiduciary funds. I know in tough times like this, if your cash flow is tight, it's easy to say, hey, I have money sitting aside in my sales tax savings account. I'm going to dip into that because I have to pay these bills. That is not your money. Those are called fiduciary funds. That is the state's money, just like your employees' payroll withholdings. Don't dip into those funds. They come with huge penalties, and unfortunately, I've seen that far too many times where people say, well, I'm robbing Peter to pay Paul. Well, unfortunately, you're the one that's going to get caught in the middle, and you're going to get the penalties, and you have to put that in your wheelhouse. So that is just clearly not your money. Once you collect that money, you have to put it aside, and that's for the state or the federal government, and it's really easy to do, but you have to be very cognizant of that. So hopefully these are just a few tips and tricks that I actually consult with my clients. you know, it's something that you really need to know your business, and hopefully the things that I had mentioned, if you haven't tried them, you might want to consider trying them in the future, and hopefully this will help with improving your cash flow. So.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. I thought it was very informative. Just to remind everybody of the format, we will have all the presenters present, and then any questions and answers will be the last part of the session. So at this point, why don't we jump into Tom? Are you ready for some updates?
Sure. So I think that the big thing that that I have to share is that the money allocated to the Paycheck Protection Program was spent, which is both good and bad. Good that the program is valuable to companies and is being used, but also kind of scary in that that's how profound the need is right now. And so we've been following in the news for the last week about our friends in Washington taking steps to make sure that more money gets added to the program so that more money can be deployed to small businesses. And what happened yesterday is the Senate passed a bill and sent it on to the White House, and I'm not sure if anything has happened yet this morning, but I can't imagine it will be held up. And essentially the numbers are another 300 million has been added to the 350 that already existed in the Paycheck Protection Program. And what's interesting is 60 million was devoted specifically to small banks to be able to, for them to deploy into the companies that they support. And so one of the concerns was that the Bank of Americas of the world are so big that they could dominate the whole thing. And now at least 60 billion is carved out for the small community banks. And then the other thing, in addition to the 300, was a 60 billion, in additional idle funds. So those are emergency loans / grants available to companies with a little more flexibility than what's available through the Paycheck Protection Program. So all the other rules that we've been learning about Paycheck Protection Program loans go through your bank, and idle loans go through the SBA. Those all hold true still. And it's going to be a couple days before this is finalized and the banks are ready to deploy capital. But the good news is that we're starting to hear examples of companies that are getting money through these programs. And so for a while, a lot of people put a lot of time in and nothing was coming out of it, but that's beginning to change. And so that's kind of it right now. That was really high level and really quick. I think I'm kind of doing that by design so that I'm not boring everyone with the details of PP versus idle. But if those come up in the questions, I can cover those then. Okay,
thanks, Tom. All right, let's switch gears and talk about Zoom. We're all spending a lot of time on it now. So we thought we would have the mechanics of Zoom so we can kind of understand a little bit more about what we're using and how to use it best. And we'll do that with Kevin. And then we'll go on to the etiquette related to the use of Zoom. So Kevin, do you want to start with your portion?
Yeah, sure. I'm going to share my screen. It's kind of like a Zoom 2.0 type deal because I think we're all kind of familiar, with logging in, getting access, getting people to hear us. This is kind of more way you can take it, a step further because it's my belief that these Zoom meetings aren't going to disappear once everything goes back to, normal or whatever that is. So it's kind of a way to embrace some of this stuff to make it kind of more professional looking. And, I guess we'll check it out. So I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to find it. All right, I'm hoping you guys can see that, which is good. Let's see here. All right, so one of the first things that you can do is create a virtual background. Now it's kind of cool that I look like I'm the only one that did that. So that's cool because if all you guys had this would be useless. So one of the things in the settings you can do, if you kind of want to hide all the stuff behind you, most of us are either at home or if we can go to our offices, that's great. But as you see, my basement, I got a lot of stuff there. So in order to kind of make things a little more nice, you have the option to load any photo you want. Now, for those of you that own businesses, you know, it was my first time here, so I'm not familiar with everyone. This is kind of where you could put that there if you had a, you know, a nice picture. You know, I know Pat had his background photo just of himself, but, you know, I've had it where I've had, you know, to mess around, just a picture of myself. So that's it. Let's see. So the other things you can do is you have a chance to touch up your appearance. So it's kind of one of those filter type deals. So as you can see from mine, that's what it does when I click that. But it's just another way, you know, you really can't see much with people, you know, kind of this way. So it's just another way for those of you who are kind of, you know, cautious or nervous about being on camera. Because it's, you know, not everybody's used to it. So that's kind of one thing you can do. There is an issue though, when you do the virtual backgrounds. It kind of, every now and then you kind of morph in and out. Sometimes people will disappear. They'll grab a bottle of water and it'll disappear. So one of the ways to combat this is using a green screen. So I bought one because I was tired of disappearing. And the funny thing with that is if you look now to get one of these things, they're all sold out. Because I think people are becoming aware, like I said earlier, that this is going to be the way people do things moving forward. So I suggest checking them out. You know, I know money's probably tight for everybody. But if, you know, it's worthwhile checking out. So there's that. Moving on, webcams. Now, most modern devices have, you know, pretty good webcams. I have a Surface Book. It's about 4 years old. So it's good enough. But there's a way you can kind of, you know, get into the 4K. I'm sure everybody's heard of 4K TVs. So this is just another way that you can kind of jazz up your meetings. Another interesting fact about this is it was the first webcam to sell out as of a few weeks ago. Now, it's not cheap. You know, again, you're at the $200 mark, but it was interesting because of all the webcams available, that the highest quality, most expensive one would be the first one to disappear. And I think that, again, goes back to the fact that everybody is preparing to have meetings like this, you know, going forward. Typically, we'd always do it with people who are in other states or hours away. Now, you know, people are minutes away, and it's been, you know, extremely effective. I know for the meetings that I've had with Janine, we've done a few on this, and it was fun having coffee at the Orange Cat. But it's super easy just jumping on with this, because we've had, you know, where we were going to meet at a certain time and it got pushed a little bit. So now you just send a text message, jump on this, and then it's the way to go. So the other benefit of having this is you can, you know, create videos for yourself kind of with this setup. You get a green screen, you get a camera, then you can kind of film yourself for content for your social media pages. You know, if you want to do, you know, the vlogging with the video stuff, you can kind of get into that. So it's just another thing, you know, to take a look at. So the other one is headphones. I see a lot of people on some meetings, they have them. Try to get a pair that's maybe noise canceling, so you kind of block out everything. I think everybody on this meeting today is kind of in a, you know, quiet area. But it's something to definitely check out. You know, it just makes it easier. You know, if you have spouses who don't want to listen to what you're talking about all day, it's kind of the way to go. So a quick tip is the space bar to mute and unmute. Usually, you know, I see people fumbling around when it's their turn to talk. They're trying to click around the screen and do all that stuff. So if you just use a space bar, you just hold it down, it'll unmute you, and you can talk, and they just let it go when you're done. So that's kind of one of those quick tips, and that kind of leads into some other stuff with keyboard shortcuts. Now, it might look kind of overwhelming when you get into the settings menu. for our business, it's a lot of content creation. So we're used to using shortcuts because we don't want to click all around the screen. So I would definitely, check them out. You have to enable them. And then just kind of play around with it. Try to set up Zoom meetings with people, even just to figure out what works and what doesn't work. It's all, about creating efficiency, ease of use. And I think, a lot of us were probably thrown into the whole Zoom thing in the beginning. Like I said, it's not going to go away. So, kind of embracing it would be your best bet. So there's a whole bunch in there. I'm sure some people might have questions, this might be scaring them. And if anybody wanted to jump on a Zoom meeting with me, we could play around with all this stuff and see what works. So you don't have to be too afraid. So let's keep going. So record meetings. So that's one thing that is awesome with this. And I know I saw in the beginning this meeting's being recorded. It's a nice way to just focus on what people are talking about. You don't have to take notes. You don't have to, constantly writing stuff down and if you miss something, you can always go back to it. And one of the nice features within here is if you look, is you can record separate audio files for different speakers or people. I'm not saying that, everybody is important, but sometimes when you jump on these things or, people are more important than the others. So you can make sure you record all of that. You just make sure you have space available on your hard drive to do this. But it's a way to, you can refer to every Zoom meeting you've ever had if you have this. One thing you'd want to do if it's more a one-on-one type of deal, just let the person know that you are recording it and if they're okay with it. I haven't had any issues, but it's, it's something to be aware of. So you kind of protect yourself from doing it. So breakout rooms, I don't know how many of you, either work with a bunch of people or not, but at our place we have designers, installers, the partners. So this is kind of a way to have a meeting within a meeting. There's been a lot of times that I've been on these group sessions where somebody says, oh, I'll talk to you about that offline. With this feature, you don't have to do that. You can kind of break away. And if there's projects you're working on, a further discussion that needs to be had, you can do that. So it's another thing to play around with. It's one of the things, when you start working from home, the first thing you worry about is, how am I going to have my files? How am I going to talk to my coworkers, and then clients? So we've had success meeting almost every day using all these breakout meetings in Zoom. It was kind of a way for us to get together because collaboration is a huge part of what we do. And not having that, before Zoom, was hard. But with this, if you fully embrace this, that's kind of what my hope is. So I think that's probably it. Then it's going to be a whole bunch of questions. So I will wait for those.
Okay, thanks so much, Kevin. All right, I think next on is Larry, and we'll get some etiquette related to Zoom.
Good afternoon, everyone. I wanted to thank Roscoe and Pat for inviting me to share some thoughts. I will attempt to share my screen, unless Roscoe loaded my slides. I had experimented with the backdrop. Mine was supposed to make me look like George Clooney, but somehow it didn't happen.
Also,
There we go. We'll go tropical. And let's see if we can bring up my slides.
And Larry, I have yours also queued up if you want me to bring them up on my end.
Oh, that'd be great. Yep. Appreciate it. There we go. Perfect. So like all of us in the last 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks, we've started living on Zoom. And I'm wondering which bank is going to come up first with the idea of treating Zoom like real estate, since we're all living there and we can either rent Zoom or have mortgages on Zoom, or, you know, could be, hopefully it's not going to be a 15 or 30-year term, but you know, we're in that world now, and that's a reality. And many of us have seen articles or read articles and have participated in meetings, and all of the things that Kevin referenced are reality as far as how the tool works and you know, what we have to do to navigate through it. The point I want to make today, the point I want to lead with, is the fact that we have to remember that we are still humans dealing with humans, even though we've got an extra layer, if you will, of technology added into the exchange between the humans. And one of the things we're battling actually is beyond our control when we communicate this way. Our brain is geared and built to process in 3D. 3D looks normal to us when we look around and observe and work and walk and live through the world. But all of this technology, Zoom and other platforms, is two-dimensional. So the brain in the back of your mind sometimes says, I'm not sure what's going on here. I'm not sure what you want me to do, how you want me to process. So one of the things we have to remember is that we have to accommodate for that, and we have to help the other people and ourselves on these video conferences sort of make a different type of connection. But before you even get on a Zoom call or another platform, I want you to visualize success, because to me, this is no different than when we were kids in grade school and the English teacher said in 4th grade, hey, you're gonna have to give a speech, you're gonna have to make a presentation. And we went home and we told our parents and we told our friends, and most of those folks said negative things to us. They said, oh, you're not gonna like that, and people are gonna laugh at you, and your palms are gonna get sweaty, and you're gonna forget the information, and it's gonna be the worst day of your life, instead of saying positive things to us. So before you even turn on your computer or log yourself into one of these sessions, especially if you're the host, if you're the presenter, I really want you to visualize what it looks like when that session goes really well. How you're going to look, how the people you see on the side of your screen, the top bar, the sidebar, how they're going to react. The fact that there's going to be interaction, either verbally or through the chat room, the chat box. You know, picture things going really well and you being extremely comfortable, because that makes a huge difference psychologically. It's no different than you're walking through a parking lot to go into a coffee shop to meet someone that you're going to make a sales presentation to, pitching a prospect or meeting with a client. You know, hopefully you wouldn't be walking through the parking lot saying, boy, this is going to go really bad and I'm going to perform really, really poorly, and they're not going to buy my goods or my services anyway. Typically you wouldn't say that, so set yourself up in a mental mindset of positivity. Okay, next slide, please. So here's some tips, and photo credit to Zoom, because that's a picture they supplied. And everybody there looks fabulous and is well lit. Prepare the materials you're going to need in advance, just like any other meeting you would go to. I've been on a few meetings. Some of them were very short, some of them were very long, and people were scrambling. I think it was because they were either at home and they forgot to prepare, or they forgot where they put all their materials, and all of a sudden they walk away from the camera, they step out of the room, they're tearing the house apart to look for the material that they should have had right there sitting next to them. So just like a face-to-face in-person meeting, you would hopefully not come unprepared to a meeting of that nature. Don't come unprepared to these Zoom meetings, webinars, conferences, get-togethers, happy hours, whatever it is you're calling them, all right? Position your camera properly. Hopefully mine's not bad. I can tell just by looking at everyone on all of these calls that people have different camera angles that they're using. The best advice I've gotten lately is if you have to raise your computer up, your laptop up, so that the built-in webcam is about even with the top of your forehead, that's going to give most of us an angle, depending on your camera, that's going to look like we're talking to people as close to face as we can get. And again, that takes some of that edge off of that 2-dimensional versus 3-dimensional concept. I see a lot of people sometimes on calls, the camera angle or the tilt of the laptop is at the wrong angle, and it's shooting them up almost from the floor. Pat looks like, I'm going to pick on Pat. He looks like he broke into somebody's house there, and he might be on a security camera. That one's like shooting way down at him. So he's got to level that out somehow. He looks a little bit small there.
Get a taller
it's not
chair.
a bad thing, but we're going to talk about that. Play around with that. You can log on to Zoom and say, start my own meeting, and just with no one else on a session, and play around with that camera angle. Make sure you're looking your best. We're still people dealing with people. We see each other. All right. I've been in a lot of meetings where we have the mysterious people behind the black curtain, and it only had their name. And I understand sometimes there's reasons why we want to do that. But again, you wouldn't dress down probably for an in-person meeting with someone. And a lot of not only being on Zoom and using the right etiquette, but a lot of getting through the mental challenge of this crisis we're living through is maintaining your regular habits. The number one thing that our brain does is recognize patterns. So getting up, brushing our teeth, taking a shower, getting dressed in work attire to do work, even though you're at home, isn't a bad idea. And I've heard a lot of people joke on a lot of Zoom meetings and say, well, yeah, but I don't have to wear pants. Well, hopefully you would wear pants to an in-person meeting. So put your pants on when you come to the Zoom meetings as well. All right, so look your best. We already talked about your backdrop and your surroundings. I think the first week or so I was on some Zoom meetings from my home office, which is also my one son's bedroom when he's home for college. I was looking at myself over my shoulder in the Zoom meeting going, oh yeah, that's my kid's mattress flipped up against the wall, or that's not looking too professional. Maybe I should find a way to get rid of that. All right. Limit your distractions and mute your microphone. And Kevin talked about how to do that. And we're all going to have situations, we're working from home. I've been on meetings where dogs came into the room, where 14-year-old teenagers came into the room in their underwear, where spouses came into the room saying, what's for dinner? There's nothing to eat. I mean, you could probably, if you have a place in your house where you could seclude yourself and put a little note on the door that says, hey, mom's in a meeting, dad's in a meeting, I'm in a meeting from 1 p.m. till 2 p.m. Please do not disturb unless the house is on fire or the food truck is at the curb. Other than that, don't bother me, leave me alone. Just try to limit your distractions and be earlier on time, just like you would for a real face-to-face meeting. I've been in some meetings that have gotten a little bit hung up because people weren't on time, or a number of people weren't on time. And the weird thing about technology, and I'm trying to make some parallels here in my own mind, we've all become so conditioned to, like, I want an instant answer to my email because I hit send, and why aren't you sending back an answer instantly? I think we're starting to adapt sort of the same mindset when it comes to Zoom. We're on, we're fired up, we're ready to go, and sometimes the host is sitting there going, well, where is everybody? Or where's the key speaker, or where are some people from your team? So to the best of your ability, be early. If you're in a holding center, in a holding room, and the host is controlling that, they will let you in when they see that you're on board and in the on-deck circle, or be on time. Next slide, please, Roscoe. Be yourself. That's technology, and we lose a little luster because we're 2D and not 3D, but let your personality shine through. Be you. There shouldn't be like a technological you persona and an in-person you persona. You are who you are. If you're funny, be funny. If you're serious, be serious. Be yourself. The technology is going to change that a little bit, but it shouldn't alter it dramatically. All right. Do not, in these meetings, attempt to multitask. We can all tell when we're all trying to do it if we're, on another computer typing and we're checking our phones for email, and, with the other hand, we're cooking dinner over the sterno burner, whatever we're doing. Focus. I mean, a lot of these meetings haven't been long. We've done a few things here at Niagara Global Tourism Institute that, quite honestly, I gave the participants a lot of credit because we asked them to pay attention for a 2-hour time span. That's a lot of time for anybody to pay attention, all right? So try not to multitask. Try not to talk over other people. I believe you'll see either a yellow bar around a person's face, or at least a bar underneath their screen, their portion of the screen. when they unmute their mic and they want to speak. It's going to happen. We're going to trip over each other. We don't have the same body language. We don't have the same peripheral vision that we would if we were normally in a room with other people. It doesn't usually get crazy, but don't let it get out of control. All right. Don't eat during the session. You know, I've seen some people, you know, again, multitasking. I'm going to have a PB&J while I'm on this Zoom call, and I'm going to forget to turn my camera off. And, you know, now you're slurring your words and jelly's all over your shirt. And it's just not good business etiquette. It's not good people etiquette. All right. And then remember, it's social etiquette. The things that you would not do in person with other humans, you shouldn't be doing on these calls either, because we can see you. And sometimes it's hard to remember that we can see you unless the host turns off your camera or you turn off your camera. So we shouldn't be, you know, we should wear pants. We shouldn't be picking our noses or picking our ears or twirling our hair or, you know, doing things or having things in the background that are distracting and not proper professional etiquette. Next, please. You're going to have to hype it up a little bit. And anybody here, if you've ever had the chance to listen to yourself, I still meet people who go, wow, is that how I sound when I leave a message on an answering machine or on a voicemail? And if any of you have been a guest on a radio show or a television show, you realize that you have to sort of take your energy level to another place, the projection of your voice to another place, sometimes even your physical and your facial gestures to another place, because technology takes some of that edge away, that in-person edge, and it flattens us out. So quite honestly, if I were speaking at a normal tone and maybe even at a regular conversational rate, if I were meeting with you in person, if I were using that rate and that tone now, you'd be bored. You might be bored anyways. Don't raise your hand if you are. Because technology flattens that out a little bit. So, you know, they tell you when you're on TV and when you're on the radio, you got to dial it up a little bit, because we lose something through the transmission of sound and voice and vision through airways. We lose some dynamics. So you got to pump it up a little bit. All right. If you are the host, consider muting the microphone or disabling the video of an unprofessional participant. Doesn't happen often. You know, we've heard that every now and then. There's been some Zoom bombing going on, and people have fallen in out of the sky and cracked the code and interrupted meetings and have been unprofessional and disrespectful and things like that. I think in the last few days, last week or so, Zoom's gotten that under control. They went and hired a pretty elite team of cybersecurity experts to help them work out those bugs. But it could be somebody, you know, just in your meeting who, you know, instead of having a sidebar or outside the meeting conversation, they want to bring up a topic now that maybe shouldn't be brought up or bothers other people or is offensive in the way they present it. All right. I alluded before, I said sometimes stand up. Now, obviously, you're going to have to change the level of your computer, your laptop, when you do that. There you go, Pat. See that? Now he's like 6'7". Now look at how fabulous he looks, because he looks more like the guy I would be speaking to face to face. Right? There's another thing about standing up. It helps with your breathing, your speaking. You know, air moving from your diaphragm up through your voice box out of your mouth. So, you know, most professional speakers don't speak from a seated position. They speak on a platform and they're standing up, maybe behind a podium, maybe they're not. The only thing you have to be a little bit careful of is that you're not rocking back and forth, because that's a habit some people have when they are standing. But feet on the ground, some of us have these 2-minute sunrise meetings at work, quick refresher meetings. Those are stand-up meetings. They're not sit-down meetings. So for some of you, experiment with, do I feel more comfortable? Am I more attentive? Am I more presentable if I'm standing up? And then Kevin alluded to the record function. If the meeting can be recorded, record it. And then later on, when you've got time, review how you looked. Use that review to improve your style, your delivery, and your impact. And just notice yourself. Look at the things Kevin talked about. Look at your background. Look at the lighting. Some of the things I've mentioned. You know, do I have the right camera angle? Am I dressed appropriately? Am I creating shadows on myself? Do I look like I'm engaged? Do I look like I'm energetic? Do I look like I'm ready to fall asleep? All right, and again, you can log on to Zoom, you can run a meeting with yourself, you can record it, you can play it back whenever you want, and you can kind of learn how to take your game to the next level. So that's it as far as etiquette goes for me. Thanks for participating. Thanks for your attention.
Okay, thank you so much for the presentation. So now we're going to open it up for questions. Let's just get one on the chat right now. And looks like it's from Pat. And he's asking Kevin if he can hang a bright green sheet behind instead of buying a green screen. Kevin? Can't hear you.
Yep, no, yes, you can. You have to buy something that is called chroma key. That's kind of what green screens are, classified as. So if you find a sheet, and they have them on Amazon, you can do that. Just make sure you iron it and you have something to hang it from. A lot of those are made, kind of for, those professionals that have all the stand-up kits and the pole that goes across. So just be sure you have some way to hang it, that it's not all wrinkly. But you can absolutely do that.
And then the second part of that question from Pat is if it's being recorded and there's multiple breakout rooms, how does that play out?
You can, it depends how many, usually there's only like 1 or 2 rooms. Typically the host is not in one of those breakout rooms. So you have to give access to somebody who's in that room to record it. But
Okay.
It can be done.
All right, thank you. So now it really is open to just any questions from any of the speakers or for any of the speakers. Anybody have anything?
I'll just comment on the cash flow thing. So a long time ago, seems like, I ran a lot of businesses, and one business was a fairly large business, and I had a customer that was 50% of our business, and they left me for dead. And that was one of 2 times when I really should have gone bankrupt, and mostly because I was naive, I didn't go bankrupt. But I survived both of those cases because I over-communicated with the people I owed money to. I couldn't pay them. I didn't have any money. I was in deep doo-doo, but I never stopped talking to them. And so that's, I think, real good advice to keep. And then making smaller payments to them. I don't remember doing that, but I remember explaining why I couldn't over and over and over again. And people really hung with me. And I don't think if you just go silent, people are not going to hang with you.
That's very true. Very true. Yeah. Communication is the key, and especially in the situation that we're currently in. I mean, we're all in the same boat. And so, but as long as you keep communicating, I think that will go a long way.
Right.
How about anybody else? Any other questions? We good? All right. Well, I just wanted to thank you, and I really appreciate, and we all appreciate the donation of your time to sit through these and present at these. Because they're recorded, I have a feeling that sometimes people wait for that, because I've had people afterwards say, can you send me a copy of the recording? I couldn't make it. There's a whole lot of people that are having a lot of these, as we talked about, so we're kind of in competition for everybody's time right now. But I will say, though, that your information will be out there. People, we put it on social media, and there are people that will stop and watch it. So again, thank you for donating this time and your good input to this session. I just want to talk about next session. Next week, we're going to have 2 attorneys, both of them named Christopher, not at the same company. One of them's Christopher Brown. He's of Roche, Lennon, and Brown PLLC, and he's going to be talking about the small business stimulus options through the economic injury disaster loan and the Paycheck protection program from a legal perspective, the employer protocol to employee termination and furloughs, which I think is really important. I'm getting a lot of calls on things like that lately, especially as people are starting to talk about what do we do to reopen. And actually, we have some gap in time. I will be happy to present what companies should be thinking about right now for when we get that okay to reopen. And then he'll be talking about business considerations for tenants and commercial leases. And then we have Christopher Moggins. I hope I said that right. But he's from Goldberg and Sagala. And he will be talking about the New York State Department of Labor and a shared work program, which allows employers to reduce employees' scheduled work hours without resorting to layoffs, which is another very important thing people are thinking about. And then in return, allows employees to receive unemployment benefits. So it's kind of probably that partial unemployment that is out there and those options. And again, a lot of these things were not so readily available or available at all in the past. So I'm really excited about both of them coming on next week. Hopefully all of you can join. If not, as we told you, we do record these. But again, I really appreciate everyone's time and participation. And we always say that really, if you have a topic you want us to cover, please let us know, because we'll be happy to find the subject matter professional best suited to cover the topic. So again, depending on time next week and what we decide, I may come on and talk about the how to prepare to reopen our businesses. So thank you again. Have a great day.
2 points I think I want to make. Tomorrow morning is our first Trek Mastermind group. While we're all working from home, the Mastermind group will be virtual. It'll be 1 hour a week, Thursday mornings at 8 o'clock. Hopefully we get back to face-to-face, and the meetings will be monthly for 5 hours in the morning, once a month. But for now, it's 1 hour a week. Starts tomorrow morning at 8. If you go to the Trek by NGTI website, trekbynGTI.com, there's information about how you can sign up for the Trek Mastermind group. There's also a page there about our Niagara Open Coffee Club. That happens now Monday mornings at 8:30 in the morning. We used to be at 7:30 when we're live face-to-face at 7:30, but there's no sense getting up for a meeting at 7:30 if you don't have any place to go to after the meeting. So we're doing it at 8:30. So I'd like to invite all of you to join that. And spread the word about this meeting that we'll have every Wednesday at 1.
Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone.